So, I mean, I know I was talking about this 10 or more years ago about, you were seeing stories in various publications, with the terminology house blockers. Yeah. And and what they were meaning by that was that older people especially, that, maybe their children have left home, but they're comfortable enough wealth wise, and they've done reasonable in life that they can afford the bills and choose to stay in the home that they've had their family, they've grown up, they've spent their adulthood in, they've got their memories, all the rest of it. They're comfortable where they stay. Yeah, they can afford up until that point, the council tax, the whatever, and the vastly expensive energy bills that we're currently exposed to, especially in places like the UK. But it has been about applied pressure. And, as I said, I remember articles where they were like literally saying, yeah, it's fine and dandy these people can afford to live there, but when we've got such a housing shortage. But remember, this housing shortage is deliberate and by design. After all, when you've got lower birth rates, yeah, the last thing you've got a problem about is accommodation, is housing, yeah? And their solution is, instead of looking at, well, why is that the case? Why has fertility levels gone through the floor? Why has testosterone levels gone through the floor? Why has sperm counts dropped like a brick? No, let's look at none of that. Oh, and also, let's not look at the education system for failing completely and utterly to teach children to have the skills to do the jobs that up until a few decades ago was never an issue, but somehow now we need to look to the third world to look after our oldest, for example. How many care homes where it's, they're boasting about in Scotland having something, at the very least, something like 20, don't quote me on this, but at least something like 20 odd percent, and it could be more, of carers for the elderly are now, well, were never born in the UK. Now, think about this. People who, in many instances, English is not their first language, dealing with people who, well, they're not faculty-wise at their best, yeah? Their faculties, by and large, are failing, yeah? And our solution is to bring in more and more people from... they've literally said on how many occasions, if it wasn't for uncontrolled immigration, the NHS would collapse. This is a Ponzi scheme, because these people will still need hospitals themselves, especially when they haven't been exposed to the same amount of excitotoxins and so many other toxins and processed foods. So they'll be less immune to it to a point. Yeah? So this monster just carries on and on until these countries, name the Western country, goes to the point of collapse and beyond, which brings in order out of chaos. Yeah? Absolutely. Yeah? And you'll be like, oh God, Scott, what are you talking about here? But
Of course, English mansion tax is definitely overcomplicated and a limited way of achieving a progressive outcome, but it is progressive to tax the wealthiest.
See, on this witchcraft wording, it is progressive. To progress in life, it's progressive to destroy. This is this double speak again. It's progressive to attack anybody that has any wealth of their own, which ties into this sort of hybrid of communism that they had been experimenting over the last 100 and odd plus years. As I said, when you look into the history of the Russian Revolution, you even look at how Nazi Germany came about, or Mussolini. By and large, you just look at the funders. The banks. And where was the advice coming from? Lots of think tanks, etc. It was Western banks, by and large, funding various political systems to find the best one that had absolute control over the people. over many decades. They've fine-tuned it to, some of them quote a term communitarianism, whatever, collectivism, blah, blah, blah. But to push people out of their houses, I mean, you look at mansions, because in this instance they're talking about a mansion tax. Now, they're already rolling out in England and Wales, as far as I know, yeah? And any house over, apparently, at the moment, 2 million will have to pay, like, at least double the council tax it was paying before, and possibly more. I mean, it's something ridiculous anyway. And remember, once they get away with that, they'll then just put it across so many other bands, and less. And remember, look, I say to people, fair play, if you can afford to heat your house, you look after it, all the rest of it, blah, 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 fine. Yeah. But this is not what this is about. This uncontrolled immigration, all the rest of it, is leading to a designed, deliberate and by design, housing crisis. And their solutions to it is to literally build on arable farmland, which we've got a finite amount of, yeah, but hey, over time, you will eat the bugs. All the rest of this ties into eugenics, yeah. And now this guy, this puppet, yeah, this mansion tax.
Chancellor's English mansion tax is definitely overcomplicated and a limited way of achieving a progressive outcome, but it is progressive to tax the wealthiest people in the most valuable.
And remember, the wealthiest people who are certainly clued up, I'm not saying all wealthy people are clued up, but you find many are. Many of them are leaving and have been for the last few years, especially the UK. Many of them have gone to different places, all the rest of it. How confident they are as regards their long-term survival, how they carry on, well, some are more clued up than others. They're obviously, many of them are networked, yeah? But the tax burden on essentially those who are making less money will become more over time simply because the wealthy are leaving. And one of the reasons will be, well, all of a sudden I'm paying a ridiculous amount of money on top of my ridiculously expensive energy bills just to live in my own property. Now, initially what will happen is, over time, larger houses over a certain figure, the value will start dropping because people will associate it with what their yearly costs are, running-wise, in no small way down to council taxes, yeah? Which, hey, they may go back and, well, but if they're paying this, we can get them to pay that, and, I mean, some lunatic here, a castle and a mansion tax is the way to go, but also raise bands E, F, G, and H by 10%, and this would release blah, blah, blah. And, if that comes in, and at some stage it no doubt will, and then it'll be A, B, we all need to do more, we all need to do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And anybody's got any kind of property, oh, you've got a spare bedroom. Right, well, you want to keep that place, don't you? Yeah. I mean, look, I'll say it. House blockers was a term about 10, 15 years ago, although my search engine I'm using at the moment is shit at finding it. But there were stories galore, demonising people that had a property of their own. They'd spent a life in, grew up, children grew up in. They've left home, but they still can afford to have the house. They know that their children will come back occasionally, blah, blah, blah. But they're bonded with it for great reasons. They want to live their life out there. Over time, the ability to do that will disappear.
Houses fairly. 2 years ago, the Scottish Government developed proposals for far more effective changes to council tax for higher bands. If those proposals were dusted down and the changes made to bands F, G and H, it would put a desperately needed £126 million in total.
And remember, to spend more money on uninvited guests and whatever else and the continual destruction of any quality of an education system, because more by the day, it's less and less teachers and more activists. Yeah? Because look how dumbed down generations are becoming now. And even the ability to read a book is, I don't need you to do that. Seriously. even the neurological effects of that alone over time. Anyway,
services. That's enough for thousands of additional support needs teachers or social care workers. The First Minister surely...
who are all invested in the divide and conquer, the destruction of the family, the promotion of do what thou will, LGBT, X, Y, and Z, and you may identify as a wee boy, but hey, over time you may want to be identified. I know, hey, you want to be one of the cool kids in the class, and don't worry, we won't tell your folks. I mean, the level of this. Meanwhile, over time, think about this. It will become more and more prohibitive to even have a decent sized house. And remember, while they're talking about taxation through a council tax, in the instance of, you could look at property pages over the last, even the last decade especially, or longer, but larger houses that they're now into, they've been designed now into, they've been rebuilt into 3 apartments. The internals have been mucked about with, and what was somebody's family home is now 3 properties. Yeah, but look at council tax wise, those 3 properties to a council is far more than no matter what they're charging for a single property. From all angles, these bastards, And as I said, you're gonna get into a situation where I skipped through this article. I didn't read it in vast detail, but living alone in the larger property isn't good for you. Yeah, you're going to see more and more articles like this. Solutions. Homeowners with larger homes offering rooms to those looking for a home is a good short-term solution, but in the longer term, building more purpose-built co-living would be a better. That's great English stuff. Anyway, purpose-built co-living and shared living spaces can capture lower living costs and social benefits while at the same time providing residents with enough privacy, think about the wording of this, and a sense of place. This is collectivism on steroids. And it's going to get to the stage, even people on E-band, if you've got a spare bedroom or whatever else, you're going to be told, hey, we've got this progressive tax, but if you took somebody else in, and they'll make sure that they've, which will tie into civil assemblies, citizen assemblies, and it'll be collectivism on steroids, and it'll be the rollout of the 21st version of communism. What, do you not believe share the same belief as us? And imagine you're forced to have people into your home because it's the only way you afford to keep it going, yeah? And they're constantly, day by day, saying, what, do you not believe the same as us? Or do we have to report you to... Because, hey, remember, this all ties into the social credit score system and all the rest of it. Are you not a good global citizen? Hey, as always, I could do a much better job, but it's there in plain sight, like...
agrees with the Greens that our local services need more funding and that it's only fair to ask wealthier people to pay their fair share so that we can deliver it. First Minister, the Chancellor's English Mansion has taken the decision.
Honestly, it's the Uni Party.
First Minister.
There's a lot in what Mr Greer said that I agree with.
Seriously? These are 21st century communists.
And as he knows, the government has taken the
well paid, remember.
Decision, which of course is not warmly welcomed in Parliament, to ask people on higher incomes to pay more in taxation than they would if they lived in other parts of the United Kingdom, and I think that's the right thing to have done.
Remember, they are financially insulated from what they're promoting.
And I think it's exactly the right thing to have done. So we will consider other proposals. Mr Greer knows that he's involved in discussions with the Finance Secretary and the Minister for Public Finance, and obviously I'm fully across those discussions, and we look forward to coming to conclusions when the government's budget is taken to Parliament in January.
Anyway,